In this video, I'll build a simple backend for a Flashcards web app to communicate and store information in Google Sheets using n8n. All the code I ever need is built by AI assistants. This helps you understand some basic coding concepts so that you can create your own apps using AI. The final result is far from a production-ready tool, but it is a step further in building workflows that communicate with a front end, which we'll be exploring in the following part 2 video. Recently in the AI Forge community, I received a post from Albert, which mentioned about him being a father of 2 lovely kids and that he wanted to create a small workflow to generate flashcards on the go. And that seemed like a really good idea, so I created this entire overview of how he could build this. But not only that, I actually want to build this workflow, especially because further on, as you can see, back in ScullyDraw, we'll have a client, and this client will be testing Lovable, we'll be testing Creator, CodeDev, Bolt, Tempo, so a lot of different AI tools for creating the front end. But for this specific video, we'll focus on the server part. And the server part is all inside of n8n. This will be kind of a continuation to this video right here on how to build web apps fast, because I'll be showing you exactly how you can use this workflow right here, which was the workflow I shared down in the description for this video. What it's doing is basically allowing us to use n8n as the backend for us to fetch information in the Postgres database and then send that information back to the client. Not only that, but it also caches the data and also paginates it. So I wanted to use Google Docs in a way that it's basically going to be the control panel for the parents to check out which are the available flashcards, which are the logs, so what happened with the application, and then we'll leave the front end just to take care of the flashcards and just presenting those flashcards as a visually nice interface at which the kids will just touch the card and it will flip over showing the correct answer. So as you can see, we'll need 3 different endpoints. One to get all the flashcards, the other one to generate the flashcards, and this one will actually use AI to generate these flashcards based on these informations provided right here. Also a register answer endpoint, which will basically create the entire log inside this sheet right here. So I believe the first endpoint we should create is the generate flashcards, because as soon as we create that, then we can use the get flashcards to actually retrieve the flashcards created instead of doing the opposite. And to generate this flashcard, I'll need to send from the client over to the server this structure right here. So it's going to have a group name, the question front description, then front example, answer back description, and then a back example. I've also placed a difficulty here, and this is all to send over to the AI so it understands better what is the context that I want so that it produces the correct flashcard based on these descriptions. So let's go over to our workflow. Let me grab this workflow right here, copy, paste it in here. The 2 nodes that I immediately know we will need to change are Postgres nodes. Let me delete these. This is also deleted because we won't be getting anything from Postgres. And to be honest, this would be easier to get things from Postgres, but since we want to make this simpler, we don't need to create the entire interface over at Lovable or in Cursor or whatever. Instead of that, let's use something that people already know, people that already use, which is Google Sheets. Like, I'm not aiming at making this application entirely scalable, but if I were, then certainly I would prefer to use Postgres and then create an entire dashboard for that specific case. Let's leave this workflow up here for now because it's specifically for the get flashcards. For now, we're building the generate flashcards. So this is going to be a post. The path I can use exactly this. So generate flashcards, no authentication, respond with the respond to webhook node. Now, something I really like to do is in here, go over to the production URL, activate this workflow. As soon as it's activated, I'll go over to Gemini and just type in create a curl for me, at which it calls this endpoint with post. Then we can go back here, copy everything, go back to Gemini, paste that in and say, I'd like you to send over these parameters. Okay, to be honest, this isn't the best prompting because I should specify which type should be inside of what and what are the available options. So inside of difficulty, should I use medium and then low and high? So I won't mess with that. I'll just send it over like this because depending on what it responds, we can change that pretty easily. So it brought me back this response. I want it structured in a way that I can paste it in CMD. Please structure it in a way that can paste it in my CMD. Just copy this over to the CMD, hit enter, and yeah, we got this failed message, which I believe might be, yeah, right here. So there's a space right after the word, and I also think that this slash isn't needed. So let's save that, head back to this. Actually, let's just clear this, arrow up, enter. And also to make sure it responds, we can type in webhook, respond to webhook, add that node down there. Now if we send the same request, got it back successfully, just well. So heading over to executions, you'll see that we get this structure right here. That's the structure that we want. Just copy that over, copy selection. But when you click on copy selection, make sure that the very start of the array is selected. Head back to your editor, place that in right here, pin that down, hit save, save again. And now every time you want, like, let's disable this trigger right there. Every time you want to test your workflow now, you can just click on test workflow and it will use that same information. And I believe we can directly connect a AI agent node here. Let's place that in there, already connected. The output goes over to the respond to webhook node. Opening up the AI agent node, what we get here is the prompt. This prompt will use all these variables here, so it's just a matter of how we write the text to contextualize all these variables. I'll just basically type in the keys here, so group name, and then drag that up there. Nice. Let me hit enter. Question, front description. Actually, we can be more specific here. Front part of the flashcard, because this gives a better context for the LM to understand, hey, this is actually the front part of the flashcard, and then reinforce that what we're building is a flashcard. Front part of the flashcard, this is also the description. Drag that over there as well. Hit enter, go to the next part, which is part of flashcard example. Drag that up once again, hit enter. And structure is also important while prompting, so let's give line break here and add the back part. So back part of flashcard description, drag the description up there, back part of the flashcard example, and the example is exactly this. Finally, the difficulty will do the same thing, drag that up there. Nice. Then you can check out if it's correctly getting everything down here. So group name, capitals, part of the flashcard, name of a country, then the example is Brazil, capital of the country, and a curiosity, then the example is Brasilia. This city was designed to look. Difficulty, medium. Nice. So now let's work on the system prompting. You are a flashcard generator. Based on the information provided by the user, you should create 5 flashcards. I'm just realizing that it shouldn't be group name, it should be something like theme, because it better describes what we're trying to create. But at this point, yeah, let's just use, theme of the flashcard is provided by the user in the group name. A description of what the front part of the card have is described, and you will also be given an example. The same will be done with the back part of the flashcard. Nice. So let's correct this. Let's correct that. Based on the description, examples, and difficulty, create 5 different flashcards. I think it's ideal for us to place an example of how it should return. Let's not do that for now. If it continues getting the wrong output, then we'll correct it. So yeah, hit require specific output format. We can close this. Let's save that. Output parser. Again, I don't want to use the auto fixing output parser here. Let's just use the structured output parser directly. So for the structured output node, let's remove the state. Instead of cities, let's place flashcards. In here, what we expect is an array of objects on which these objects will be, let's say, front text, right? And then the front text should be something like the front. Actually, let's use that same example. So Brazil. And then instead of a dot, let's make this the back text will be Brazilian. Nice. Let's remove these. And I think we're good to go. Nice, so now it understands that it needs to output this structure, but sometimes this doesn't work out because the LM understands that, well, the example given here is for me to return this output, and then it doesn't get that it should respond with more than one object inside of the array. So what I like to do is just grab this JSON example, head back to Gemini, let me open a different conversation and ask something like, please get me the structure for this according to this. That was the baddest prompt I've ever written in my life, but it should work. So what I did was basically get this raw usage of the input schema, provided it as context for Gemini to understand what structure I want to be created. It got me this, and while that's correct, I also want to add in a description, because this way you can add a description for each field. Please add a description for the array mentioning that 5 items should be returned. Place a description in text saying that this should be the string for the front part of the flashcard and the back text as the back part string of the flashcard. It should have the answer along with a description. And as for the front text, I need to say that it should be the question. So front text saying that it should place a description in the front text saying that this should be the string for the front part. So question of the flashcard and the back text. Okay. Also, do not place any comments. Nice. So all this is really important. This min items, max items is what is always going to guarantee that we'll get 5 results every time. The required fields are really important as well, and you don't have access to that if you don't define the schema manually. So we didn't get any errors, which means that it might be fine. Let's add a chat model, Google Gemini. This Google Gemini, let's use 2.5. Yeah, 5 seems nice. Okay, that's all added. I believe we can now test to see what happens here. Let me save, now hit test workflow. Okay, this was awesome. Nice. So output flashcards, then we got front text Argentina, then the answer Canada, Australia, South Africa, Turkey. This was awesome. All right, so this isn't what we're going to respond back to the user, because right now, if I just clear this out and send this over, it's going to create all the flashcards and send me back a structured JSON like exactly this. And that's not what we really want. We want to register those back in Sheets. So yeah, this is what it created. Let me remove this attachment right here. So let me first pin the data right here, because that guarantees that we're not going to have to use the AI agent every single time. And we can even remove the AI agent for now, or yeah, just remove it from the trigger context. Just use the webhook as the trigger. Place that down there. And let's use that information to write everything down. Here you'll have to add the credentials. There's a lot of tutorials out there in YouTube showing how to access this. I also have this tutorial inside the classroom of the iForge community. This community right here, it's just $2 for you to enter. So yeah, it's pretty accessible. Just head over to this Google APIs page at which you can learn to set up the Google API. I'll do that and get back in just a bit. After you're done with that, you can head over to the document dropdown, hit parenting flashcards generator, which is exactly this. Then you can choose from the sheet flashcards, which is exactly what we want to insert into. Already identifies everything, like all the columns, which is, let's go over to the flashcards, ID, group, question, answer, difficulty, and creation date. Now, if I were to drag, so the front text is the question down here, you see that there's this 0 here. So it will always get the first part of the array. And this is bad. Like if I were to get like the third item, which is the second on the list, we would get the number 2. So this isn't really dynamic. So we need to ensure that the previous node is listing all of these items as different items and not an item inside of a single one. Because as you can see here, this right now is treated as a single item. And how do we do that? Let me delete this connection, head over here, go over to data transformation, split out. Let me drag this node, remove this connection, drag that node connecting this previous node. And what we're going to place in here is flashcards. So it's going to split out whatever is inside of the heading test step. We get exactly what we need. That way we can connect the Google Sheets node, get that placed down here in the question. And now we get a JSON.frontText. This is not using any specific positions, and it will use all of the items since we have 5 items here. And because of that, the way that n8n works, it will loop through each one of these items while calling this node every single time. Now here we can place the question as we already did. We can place the answer, which is the backtext. And for the difficulty, creation date can be now. So let me place in, let me hit equal and now. Nice. And I don't really like to represent time like this over at Sheets. So what we can do is go over to Gemini once again, open up a new chat, send something like this is what I get with this. And then I'll pass in exactly what I'm using inside n8n. Please format that using inline JavaScript so that the date time is correctly used in Google Sheets. Hit enter, wait for that. And while it's thinking, let's head back to the workflow. Now go back to our previous node, which is the webhook node where everything began. And where it all began, we'll have the information that we need. So the group name is exactly that. And we're just getting an error here because the previous node is pinned. So you can ignore that. Difficulty, you can place that in right there. Now the ID is important, but we'd have to create another node to fetch the previous ID and then add to that previous ID as the new value for ID. So let's just leave it blank for now. This stays as something for us to do later. And I believe we can test our workflow and see what happens. Okay, ran successfully. Let's head over here. Got everything we needed. So the group is correctly placed, question, answer, difficulty. And then for the creation date, we didn't get what Gemini sent us because I forgot about that. Let's grab this. And actually, let me see what it outputs. It will output something like this, which is pretty awesome. So let's head back to the Google Sheets. Instead of using now like that, let's save, test workflow. And now this should be better because with that notation, we can make this cell except from, let's everything except from that as a date. So number, date time. And because we did that, we can go over here and filter everything from like Z to A, and then it will reverse the creation date, which is already pretty nice. Let me delete these rows right here. Delete rows. Awesome. So the generate flashcards is almost done. What we need to do here is remove this connection, remove this connection as well, place this over here, make this connect with the AI agent node, organize it down there, respond to webhook, and this respond to webhook should be just execute once because since it's receiving 5 different items, I'm not sure, but it would maybe try to like execute 5 different times. Instead of respond with first incoming item, I just want to respond with a normal text. So, or actually I want to respond with a JSON. This JSON would be like success and then true. Actually, if I do just this, it'll be kind of sloppy because independent on if it was successful or not, it's always going to respond to true. So let's remove that. So let's place that in and let's get exactly the Google Sheets. Not item. I want to get all of them and get the length. Nice. If the length is equal to 5, then that will be true as it's showing there. Then output true. If not, then output false. And this isn't the absolute best way to do it, but it basically understands that if you receive a success as false, then 5 items were not added to your sheets. Okay, nice. So at this point, what we have, and let's delete everything we have all over here. Let's head back to our CMD, arrow up, enter, and let's wait for it to process, go through the AI agent node and create everything here in Google Sheets. Nice. So everything was created. Again, it used Argentina. Now it's Egypt, Thailand, Canada, as well as their answers. Pretty nice. So generate flashcards is already done. Now let's go over to get flashcards. And this should be easy because ideally you're just going over to Google Sheets and retrieving the data that's in there. But we want to do it in a way that it's using pagination as well as caching because we don't want to get every single flashcards. Like imagine that we have 100 flashcards in here. We don't want to retrieve all the 100 flashcards. We want to get a point where we're showing all the possible cards. So we have capitals and then we'll have like sports or some type of different themes. And then these theme cards will be shown. They already loaded with all their cards inside of the client side. So we're already doing kind of a sloppy thing, which is sending over an entire part of the data. Ideally, we would just fetch for the groups and then fetch for the other information as soon as we're inside a page with the ID of that specific group or the specific theme. But since we're not going to do that, at least we should use pagination as well as the caching to ensure that this is much faster. So yeah, let's go on and get the flashcards. It's this workflow right up here. Let's deactivate this previous workflow, hit save. Let me see if I activate it. Yeah, the pin data is there still, and that's really important. Hit save. This will continue being a get node, but let's use get flashcards as our path. Nice. So get flashcards, that's correct. Using respond to webhook node, that is also correct. So let's save this. Now inside the parse query example, and I do explain more about it inside of that video, so I really recommend that you check it out. But some things that we're not going to be using in here are these filters because we don't have channel ID, sent status, date from, date to, minimum views. So we can delete that completely and even remove them from the cache key since they're never going to exist. Let's delete all this. So channel ID, sent status, this, we're not going to use any of these. Okay. So the only things we'll be using is, and we can remove this as well. Instead of video stats, it's going to be flashcards. Then a valid page, valid limit, sort field, sort order, everything in there we'll be using. Let's remove the minimum views. Parsed minimum views always also going to be deleted. Delete this, delete these comments. Huge chunk of this node will be removed. So yeah, I think that's it. Those were the things we needed to remove. We can save this, remove this connected node. After that's connected, save it, head over here, go over to production URL, copy that, make sure that this is activated, open your prompt, command prompt, type in curl and the URL that you just copied. It returned exactly what is created inside of this node right here. We can head over to executions, find the webhook fetch, copy that, editor, place that in, save it as a pin data. And now we can just test the workflow just by hitting the test workflow button. At this point, we can connect the parse query parameters node with the fetch cache because it already has the data as we expect it to have. Key is exactly what we need. Has cache structure is also the same way. I don't believe it has any data aside from what we need, and we can test that out just by hitting save, removing this connection, hit test workflow, and you'll see that it successfully went through the cache. We got a null here because we still didn't register that call inside of the insert cache node, and that is what we'll work on right now. I've noticed that we have some sorting here, and we don't want sorting for this case, so let's just go over here, delete the sorting from there. Let's go up here to find, okay, sort order input, we don't want that, can remove that. Sort order can be removed from here as well. And now we have sort field, can remove that as well, valid page and valid limit. That's all we really need, no sorting. And that becomes kind of tricky because we want to retrieve all the groups and not necessarily all the rows. And for us to do that, we need to create a sheets node that's going to search inside and get all the rows from our sheet. So parenting flashcards generator, then flashcards, get all rows. If we hit test step, we get all the rows in there. That's great. Hit save. Let's organize this and now create a code node. What this code node is going to do, and we can send this all over to Gemini. Let's create another instance of Gemini. Let's send over this, paste that in there. So this was my prompt. This is inputted in my code in n8n. Please provide a JavaScript code that creates an array of the available groups. So if there were objects with different groups, all would be added to the array. For this example, it would just be capitals. If you didn't get what's happening here, basically if we were to have a different group, let's say animals, then we would have animals everywhere here and its own specific question, answer, difficulty, then this would be divided into only 2 versions. And that's what would be brought back. With the 20 example over here, it seems really strange because we're fetching for 20 different groups. So we can change that default value right over here. Let's change it over to 5. So the limit will now be 5. We can save this, head back to Gemini, and this is the code it created for us. Not sure if it's correct. It's commenting a lot, and that's really annoying. Let's create the code, paste that in there. Items 0, test step. Didn't get it right. Maybe we can just place an input and all. Test step, unique groups, null. That's probably because of this. This item might have a JSON, and what did it? Okay, JSON, then group. Nice. So test step, now we got it correctly. So capitals and animals. You just have that animals there because I wrote that down previously. Let's erase that, save. Now we could use the same split out node and split that out, but since we're already coding, so let's just copy the selection, head back to Gemini, tell it this is the result, and pass it our new JavaScript code. This is my code. Then I'll say, instead, I want it to output an array of objects on which each object has a string with the group name. Let's see if it correctly understood that and does what we need. Okay, got everything. I forgot to tell it to not create these stupid comments. Test step, we got it exactly how we want it. Let's erase all these comments here. They are not that useful, especially because there's a lot. Head back, hit save. Now it's outputting 2 items, so we can now call sheets once again. And this is really redundant. That's why using Postgres would just be much better. Select parenting flashcard generator, flashcards once again. Now for the filters, we'll want to add a filter. The column is group, and then the value I want is capitals. So now it will only return the values that has a group column of the same as this. So if I hit test step, it will return everything. If I were to add something like animals and then blah and blah, let's go back there. Now, if I hit test step, you'll see that we get all the 6 items. That's because since this code is running in loop through this array of objects, it's also considering the animals to be included. So a step we need to place inside of the code node is also to treat the pagination. So this will take the pagination. This will basically do exactly this. It'll understand that it has, let's say, this is the array. Let's make it bolder. This is the array. And then in here, we'll have capitals, animals, finance, business. Okay, that should be enough. And then, so if we determine that we're on the first page and we want the first element, then this should be returned. If we're determining that we want the second element as well, then this is brought back. If we say 2 and we want 2 results, then it will understand that it should skip these 2 and then start only after this one. So it will bring back finance and business. So that's kind of how the pagination will work. To do that, we can go back to this part, copy this selection, head back to Gemini, create another chat, paste that in. This is what, and before I even type the prompt, let's actually get this in here so that it doesn't get any issues while trying to find the node. So I type in here something like pagination data. And then this would get data from the doesn't have cache if node. We can drag that over here. And now it should have access to everything that's in here, and Gemini should understand that. Let's copy our entire code, head back to Gemini and say, this is what I receive inside the doesn't have cache node. This is my current code. I need you to form pagination, putting only the desired part of the pagination. So I believe it will understand what it needs to do with that pagination and correctly cut out whatever isn't part of the pagination we asked. Oh, actually, I forgot to send in the code. So this is what I see, blah, blah, blah. This is my current code. Let me send in current code, paste it in there, update, and now it should respond correctly. It already responded, but I saw that there's a bunch of comments, so do not place any comments on the code. Update, and let's get the code without any comments because that's really annoying. Okay, that was generated. Copy the code, go back here, hit paste, and test step. So this is correct. But if we were to change this over to, let's say 1, then it should be like page 1 and limit 1, and it should only retrieve the animals part. Actually, only retrieve the capitals part. Awesome. So let's place this back to 5. Now we're correctly paginating it, and it's only going to fetch for those paginated events. So if I hit test step right here, it only brought me 5 items, which are the 5 items corresponding to the capitals. Now this generates 5 different items. We need to aggregate that. So aggregate, nice, it's already attached. Now, instead of individual fields, we'll select all item data. It could be data, that's pretty fine. And then if we execute this, that's what we get, a single item, which is exactly what we want. Because now we can erase that, pull this over here, connect this with insert cache, and let's see if everything is correctly defined. Seems to be this flashcards right here has that, which is wrong. And maybe at some point here, right? Yeah, let's save test workflow. It's going through everything and then it stopped right here. Let's see what happened. Yeah, I think that happened because of this skip right here. If we remove that, because yeah, this works better at scale. It's not really useful for us now. If we remove that, then it successfully goes on with the workflow, and it did now because it successfully found the cache. So our workflow should be working pretty fine now. If you were to change the valid page to something like 3, then the string created for the cache would be different, and then everything else would be processed as it's a new fetch. And we'll understand that we got exactly what we needed here. Respond to webhook has a data with an array of objects in which those objects have the data we need to process all of the flashcards. Now let's see if that is correctly sent back when it's cached, and it seems to be. So all we'll do here is connect this false route over to the respond to webhook, save it, open up our CMD, clear it out, curl, then we got that. If we fetch for it again, same thing. And yeah, that's really awesome. Now we've just finished the get flashcards as well. Now let's build our final endpoint, which will be the register answer. This should be the easiest one of all. Since we're not using the ID, let's just remove everything from here. We have the logs, which contains date, time, flashcard ID. Let's remove that from there as well, since we're not using an ID. Can remove it from here as well. So date, time, question, difficulty, and success. All those we can send over from the webhook. So let's just copy this down here, create a new webhook. This webhook is a post. The path to it will be register answer. Its response will be with the response webhook node. Go back here, drag that down here. Now let's pin exactly the same data, but instead we're going to change this body over to exactly what we expect. The difficulty is already placed in there, so we can delete everything. And then success, which should be a Boolean. So true. Save that, head back to Canvas, save it. And now we'll basically add all this inside of Google Sheets. It's a good practice for us to have some kind of parsing with a code node here, just to ensure that the data is placed incorrectly with the expected schema and everything. But since this is a very, very simple application, then I won't add that step, but it's just a matter of adding an additional node here that verifies if the information is placed incorrectly. And if it isn't, then just output to the respond to webhook node with whatever is missing. So to attach to that node, let's add the Google Sheets node, which is append row in sheet. The document will be parenting flashcards generator, and the sheet will be the log sheet. We got everything mapped for us. For the date time field, we can use exactly that we created before. Hit equal, type that in. Now the flashcard ID, we won't be using that. Question, we can drag this there. The difficulty, we can drag this there as well. And for that, let's drag this in there. Back to Canvas, respond to webhook. Let's copy that over here, remove the pin data. Nice, hit save. And since now the previous node is of a different name, let's add the 3 in there. And also we're not expecting it to have a length of 5, just 1. So I've changed it to 1 there. Head back here, save, test workflow. It will go on and add that row to our log sheet. And that's it. You can organize the workflow by clicking this tidy up button right down there. We now have a way to successfully generate all the flashcards based on these criteria down here. All these flashcards created are sent over to our flashcards sheets to serve as a way for us to control everything we have over here. So if we don't like a specific answer, we can change that, because this is what is further going to be fetched for inside of the get flashcards endpoint. And then we move on to the register answer endpoint, which basically registers if the answer was correct or not. This part of validating if the question was answered correctly is all done from the front end. Ideally, like again, this is a really simple project and would not work at all if you tried to implement a leaderboard system or something like that, because we would be actually validating these answers from the front end, and that's really not reliable because people could easily cheat because of that. But for the case where you're a parent and you want to have some flashcard style game for your kids, where you have control over what is inside of those flashcards and what are the results that your kids are getting, which could work pretty well. In the part 2 video of this project, I'll create the client side, which is the front end. In my opinion, it's the funner part of it, and I'll be using Lovable as well as Bolt, Codev, Creator, and Temporal to try to create this interface. If this video helps you in any way, please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you're not a subscriber yet. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Till then.